Hello, hello. I wanted to have a little chat about the use of mobility aids, especially the use of mobility aids in young people, and also the fact that people get very confused when you use mobility aids sometimes and other times do not need them. Um, I have a chronic illness called ankylosing spondylitis and a secondary chronic illness called Sjogren's syndrome. Both of these can cause a lot of pain, inflammation in joints, huge problems with my back, um, and problems with other organs and all sorts of things. So I have bad days that are referred to as flare-ups, where basically if this is my baseline of pain and mobility issues, some days I'll be here, I'll have a really bad day, and I will need to use my wheelchair. So I have a wheelchair that has been made available to me by the disability service in Switzerland. And some days it's my only option for going and getting around and being able to be active. So then I will use my wheelchair. Either I use my electric wheels, which help me propel myself a bit, or my girlfriend will sometimes just be helping me because I'm in too much pain in like my shoulders and my neck to be able to even control my own wheelchair. And we always bring my crutch with us as well. Now, the looks I've seen on people's faces when we, for example, go to an aquarium or a zoo or a big shopping center, and I ask my girlfriend to pass me my crutch, which normally sits at the back of my wheelchair in a little holder, and I stand up. And the looks on people's faces, it's as though they have just seen a holy miracle. They stop in their tracks, they stare, they look me up and down, they frown, they get very confused, and it's made me realize that there's this assumption that if you're in a wheelchair, your legs just simply do not work. Like it's don't work, full stop, that's it. Which is a very wrong assumption. People use wheelchairs for many different reasons. Some of them may be to do with the inability to actually use your limbs. Some may have to do with, just pain levels. The pain levels that the person is suffering, and walking hurts a lot. So technically, yes, their legs work, but they are in so much pain that they cannot really walk. Other times it can be because of muscle weakness. So their legs kind of work, but it's hard to use them. And other times as well, it can be due to systematic fatigue because of an illness. I mean, I have extreme fatigue as well because of my Sjogren's syndrome and ankylosing spondylitis. And sometimes I will use my wheelchair because I'm in too much pain. Other times I will use my wheelchair because I'm so tired that it's the only way I can get around and do things. So there's different reasons why people might use a wheelchair, and there's endless reasons why someone might use a wheelchair one day, use a crutch the next day, use a walker the day after that, and then actually be able to walk around in their own home without needing any mobility aids sometimes, or even be able to leave the house without needing mobility aids. Because what you have to realize is that if this is a person with a chronic illness, their experience is not linear. It's not just this. Their experience goes like that a lot of the time. So you've got bad days, flare-ups, you've got okay days, or maybe you can do a little bit more than you can on average, and then maybe once in a while you have a really good fucking day and you actually manage to do the thing. For example, to just use my own experience, because that's the only one I can speak on, I often use the wheelchair, and I often almost exclusively use my crutch when I leave the house. I never leave the house without a mobility aid. But I can go into our garden without using a mobility aid on good days. On bad days, I will still need my mobility aid. But on good days, I could be seen walking, limping around the backyard with my dog, and I might not necessarily be using a mobility aid or be visibly disabled. This doesn't mean that I'm being dramatic when I use the wheelchair or when I use the mobility aids. It doesn't mean that it's any less valid that I need these mobility aids. And it doesn't say anything about the situation that the person is in, because a person's health isn't just a single spot on their on the spectrum of possibilities that stays and just continues in a straight line exactly the same day after day. It doesn't work like that. People who use a wheelchair um, and don't always use it are called ambulatory wheelchair users, which basically means that they use it sometimes. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I am pretty much a permanent crutch user, and what I need on a certain day depends on how I feel that day and how badly my illness is kicking my ass. So the next time that you are somewhere and you see a person stand up out of a wheelchair, maybe take a few steps, maybe use a crutch to take a few steps, don't stare. Don't look at them like you've just seen a miracle be performed. It's not a miracle. They're just an ambulatory wheelchair user. And the assumption that all people who are in a wheelchair must be paralyzed or have zero function of their legs is completely wrong. Because actually, if you look at the type of wheelchair that someone's using, you can actually tell a lot, because people who are fully paralyzed will often use a more sophisticated type of wheelchair, which offers them more support because they have to be in it 24/7. Well, not when they're sleeping, but you get what I mean. It'll often be a different type of wheelchair. My wheelchair is a relatively active type of wheelchair. It doesn't have any straps. It doesn't have anything to hold me into the seat, because I can use my own body strength to sit in the seat. I can still move my legs, wiggle my legs when I'm in there. I've seen people staring at my legs when I've been like nervously wiggling, because I also have ADHD and autism. So I wiggle. I'm constantly fidgeting. I've seen people looking at my legs, like literally they will be just staring, like, you are moving the limbs? Why? How? What is? Oh, you are in a wheelchair, but your leg is moving. What is that? How does that work? And honestly, I wish that parents would take the opportunity to teach their kids from a young age about these different ways of using wheelchairs and mobility aids, because the number of times that I've been somewhere and the little kid goes, "Mom, what's wrong with that person?" And the parents respond with, "Oh, honey, they're in a wheelchair because they can't walk." For my case, that's not accurate. I can walk. I've walked around the house all morning, limping, but I'm walking. Um, so, what would be a better thing to tell your child is, this person sometimes needs help with their mobility. They can't always walk. Some people can't walk at all. Other people can walk a little bit. Some people just need a little bit of help on the bad days, because some people are poorly. I kind of frown whenever I hear anybody talk about me to their kid and be like, "Oh, they can't walk." Because I can. I walk all the time with a crutch, but I do. I walk all the time. And another thing that happens a lot is that parents with small kids, the kids will be like, "What's wrong with that person?" And the parent responds with, "Don't stare, that's rude. Don't point it out." No, point it out. Let the kid talk about it. By not allowing your child to ask questions, you are making it seem like people who are in a wheelchair are this very scary thing that they cannot look at, they cannot talk about, and therefore they can't learn about. So, one of the things I'm very glad about, for example, with my little niece, is that she is going to be able to experience someone in her family who has mobility aids, who has a chronic illness, and she's going to learn from a young age that sometimes this person in her life will use a wheelchair. She gets to sit on their lap and ride around in the zoo. And other times, this person will walk with a crutch. And other times in the house, this person will not use a crutch at all. And that all of those things can be facets of the same experience. And I wish that parents would teach their kids a little bit more openly about this type of situation, because then maybe we wouldn't have adults who stop and stare, or who openly stop and stare at me when I stand up out of my wheelchair. Yeah, that's my little chat on ambulatory wheelchair usage. Another thing that I hope that you don't do is, when you see someone in a wheelchair, is to assume that they're somehow not intelligent. I've had this happen to me quite a lot of times, where I've had people completely unsolicited come up to me in the zoo. And I keep using the zoo as an example because I love animals. I love going to nice zoos that treat the animals well, and then I will go back to that zoo 20 times. So yeah, I'm often in zoos and aquariums when I'm rolling around in my wheelchair. I have had people come up to me and be like, "Oh, do you see the little snakey? He's right there, the little snakey." And I just look at them and I'm like, yes, thank you. I see the snake. I really don't need your help though. And people get embarrassed, I guess. Some people just turn around and walk away very quickly because they've realized that they were trying to be nice to this person who was in a wheelchair that they assumed was not able to, process the information, or that they needed to talk to them as though they were a child. And then they realize that I don't have any problems on that side of things, and they get very embarrassed and they quickly walk away. So if you see a person in a wheelchair, don't assume that they can't do things. Don't assume that you need to go up to them and baby them, talk to them like they're a child. And oh, for fuck's sake, do not, when you're talking about the person, look at the person who's with them, their carer or their partner or their friend, and speak about the person to the person that is standing next to them. Because that is extremely dehumanizing. Don't do it. It's not nice. The number of times that I've had someone talk to Elsa, my partner, right over my head, as though I wasn't capable of any kind of communication myself, is it's happened quite a few times, and it's unpleasant. So basically, don't assume that people in wheelchairs can't do things. We're capable of lots of things a lot of the time, and if we need help, most people who use a wheelchair can ask for that help, and if they're not capable of asking for that help, they will virtually always have a carer with them who can advocate for their needs, but treat the person like a human being. That's my 2 cents on wheelchair use and use of mobility aids. So I hope you've learned something, and I hope that you'll be kinder to people, or at least know how to approach a situation a little bit better. So yeah, have a good one.